How's it going, folks? Tactard Ted. It is the 17th day of May, 2022. All sorts of interesting things in the news. And before I start this today, I want to apologize because I will be hitting topics that I've hit before, but there seems to be a lot of confusion in the press about what things really are. So let's start talking about what things really are. Myth number one: the Russian army is running out of personnel. They are looking for reserves everywhere, and we will have to call that false. Why is that false? Well, currently, Russia is being very selective about what troops they are putting into their special military operation, which, let's face it, that is a joke. That is very simply how they are trying to sell their war, which is actually Joe Biden's war, which I can prove that any number of ways to you if you're willing to listen. They're being very selective. They are not putting in conscripts. And in case any of you aren't aware of what the conscription deal is in Russia, they have a conscription. They have two drafts a year, one in the spring and one in the fall. And they take able-bodied males and put them in the army for a year, unless you have medical conditions or you have some sort of educational preclusion that allows you not to serve or put off your service until your education is completed. So the draft has gone, or conscription has gone, from a 2-year conscription to a 1-year conscription. And at the completion of your 1-year conscription, you can either go back to civilian life, or if you don't have a job and you kind of like the army life, you can become what they call a contract soldier. A contract soldier is a volunteer soldier, not so much unlike what the current entirety of the U.S. Army is. A contract or volunteer soldier, somebody who signs a contract and says, you are my daddy for the next X number of years. All the soldiers currently in Ukraine from the Russian side are contract soldiers. Now, here's the interesting thing. There are only 20% of these folks in the entirety of the Russian army in Ukraine. 20%. That is 1/5 for those of you who do fractions and understand them. Right now, Russia could double the number of troops that it has in Ukraine and still only have 40% of their active component of contract soldiers in Ukraine. Now, that doesn't count the conscripts. The conscripts are not in this equation. So you have infinitely more troops. Now, how can you get the conscripts in? Well, all Vladimir Putin has to do is call it a war, declare it a war, and start mobilization across Russia, which will mean that men will have to start to show up to be inducted into service. They will become part of the Russian army. Vladimir Putin has not done that. It's well within his capabilities to do so, and he has not. So, not only with that, but also Syria has offered troops to go and support the Russian campaign in Ukraine. There are no Syrians showing up. There are no Syrian army troops in Ukraine. So this idea that Russia is somehow running out of manpower is false. You are being lied to. Surprise, surprise, surprise. Do you know who is running out of troops? I'll give you a little clue who's running out of troops. Ukraine is running out of troops. Every loss that Ukraine has is not replaceable. They have already mobilized. They have already came to the point where they are pulling people off the streets, putting them into uniform. By the way, they have to buy their own uniform. That's one thing that I'm hearing a lot of women complain about, that the army has took their husband. They don't have any money. The army is not paying them like they're promised, and their husbands have to buy their own uniforms. Very, 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 very interesting. But They are losing troops. Their troops are being killed. Their troops are being captured. Well, the Russians being killed too. Well, yeah, Russians being killed too. There are Russians being captured too. Okay, let's see videos of that, because we're not seeing videos of that. There's a couple of reasons why we may not be seeing videos of that, but we aren't seeing videos of that. Listen, I can show you videos from last night where roughly 300 fighters threw down their arms and went into captivity at Azovstal. And there's supposed to be more today. Out of the 300, roughly, there were at least 51 who were critically injured, who are now receiving medical treatment. They're not shooting them in the leg and allowing them to bleed out like the Ukrainians do. So far, there's been no footage of them walking up and cutting their throats and capping them like the Ukrainians do. So it'll be really interesting. They're keeping numbers. They're reporting. There are people there filming what went on with that first batch of prisoners. A second batch of prisoners is coming out today. And those folks, I believe, are requesting no videotaping. So I don't know how that's going to work. We'll see how that negotiated surrender goes. So the finite number of the Ukrainian troops is dwindling. Now, well, what about the foreign fighters, Dave? Well, apparently you guys aren't watching the news, or you're not getting the news that the United States doesn't want you to have, but large numbers, including the great fraud Vasquez, are leaving Ukraine. They're leaving and coming back to the United States or Great Britain or Canada, like Wally, the world's greatest sniper, Wally, who only fired 2 shots according to his own estimation of what he did in Ukraine. He's already back in Canada, thoroughly disgusted and had enough. And a lot of folks are coming out, even the humanitarian folks. I know one guy, and I haven't discussed it with him out of respect, because he's a good dude, and he did put himself on the line to go do what he thought was right. I'm not going to argue with the person. It's not what I would have done. It's not the side that I am on. I'm really on nobody's side, but I'm on the fact that we're hiding what's going on with one side. I just soon expose that. And it kind of makes me feel that those folks might be in the right when my government doesn't want me to see it. But that one person I know personally and have had discussions with him, I just don't bring it up out of respect for that guy. I think that's just the right thing to do. So we've dispelled the myth that the Russians are running out of manpower. We are exposing that everything is okay with the Ukrainian service. It is not. And I know that if, and I'm using a big if because everything that comes out of Ukraine is suspect, if some of the reports are right, Zelensky had a high-level meeting last night to figure out how he was going to talk about the mass surrender at Azovstal with not only his government, but the aid givers in Europe who are supplying this. Folks, this is really, 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 really odd. This whole thing has been just a massive fraud on you. And we're not even to the real meat of what I wanted to talk to today. And I'm going to have to hurry up if I want to get it all in. Economic warfare. That's really what I want to talk to you folks about this morning. Everybody talking about how we've hurt the Russian economy, how the sanctions are having their effect, how all this, we're gonna ruin the Russian economy. That's not what's happening. In fact, the ruble right now is doing better than it's done in years. At the beginning of the war, we were right around 68, 69 rubles to $1 American dollar. Because of the initial sanctions and all the bad news, the ruble lost value. In fact, it got to where it was less than 1 penny per ruble. Yes, over 100 rubles per American dollar. And it has rebounded. In fact, it's rebounded higher than the pre-war average. In fact, it's doing better than years. The ruble right now, last I set, is right around 63 to 64 rubles per American dollar. So you see a lot of what's going on their currency is gaining strength. Ours is losing strength due to inflation and due to all the other happiness that's going on. Plus, there's the great food shortage on the horizon. Yes, food shortage. There's tons and tons of grain in Ukraine, and they can't get it out because of this war. And there are reports that the grain storage is actually being targeted by the Russians now. Now, what you folks don't understand, and what I've always heard from the day one, is a long war does not benefit Vladimir Putin. Well, actually, it's starting to look like it is, because the longer the war goes on, and the longer that everybody has to cling to this idea of sanctions, the more it's going to benefit Russia, and the more it's going to harm Western European economies. In fact, the incredible thing is, we're talking about food shortages. Well, it's been really interesting to see how that plays on the world market, because India is now banning the export of wheat and grain from India because they've got their own folks to feed. Russia is now saying it will not let any of its grain out of Russia. So it's really interesting, folks. They're about ready to tighten the screws down. Plus, the countries who are placing sanctions on Russia, well, Russia's decided to quit sending them certain items, including raw materials they need for their industry. So this economic warfare that the West wants to engage in, and trust me, I'm a Westerner. I was born in the United States. I love my country. What I don't love is hypocrisy, and I don't love the games that we're deciding that we need to play. We're putting the screws to ourselves, folks, and we're doing it in the name of Ukraine. We're doing it in the name of the Democrat agenda, which is really, honestly, the root of this goes back to 2014. I know I keep harping on that. You guys need to go read about it. Read about Victoria Nuland, Barack Obama, even John McCain, and see what all they did to help cause this shit show. And then start reading a little bit about what happened in Donbass. And you're going to be hard-pressed to find the honest answer on that. The interesting thing is there are tons of honest answers that come out before war or before anybody understands where this is going. And those articles are out there, but you're going to have to dig deep for them. Much like the articles about the foreign fighters in Ukraine who are former ISIS members. But folks, a long war is going to help Putin. And McDonald's just helped Russia. They're pulling out of Russia after 30 years. I remember what a big deal that was, that the first McDonald's went in to Russia. The first McDonald's, and it's still, well, the building's still there on Pushkin Square. I ate there. I've ate there before. I will tell you that personally, the quality of food I've had when I've ate there has actually been above what I get in your average McDonald's in the USA. But, you know, McDonald's, they're going to help the health of the average Russian. They're going to pull out of the Russian market. And I think really what you guys don't understand is we are making Russia self-sufficient. We are making Russia stronger. We're making Russia get to the point where it can take care of itself and it doesn't need Western A, B, or C. It's going to be able to do just fine with what it's got. Because your Russian citizen doesn't need the newest iPhone. He doesn't need the newest PlayStation. He doesn't need Netflix. He doesn't need streaming of this, that, and the other. And, you know, you think this is bad now? It's going to get worse. And the longer the war goes on, the harder it's going to be on us. And that actually benefits Russia, because when this is all done, there will have been a lesson taught to the West to fuck around and find out. And that's what happened. We fucked around, and now we're finding out. And all those people who are, oh, Ukraine this, Ukraine, it's all worth it. It's all, well, dude, when you're paying $15 for a gallon of gas, which is possible, and you got to pay $5 for a loaf of bread, not really interested in hearing about it from you folks. Hey, just remember, it's Ukraine. It's worth it. You signed on for it. You think it's a great idea. Personally, me, I'd rather be left alone. I mean, I think that is a lot of why I feel like I really have an issue with all this. I want to be left alone. Russia wants to be left alone. I want to live secure. Russia wants to live secure. I just don't want any more shit show. Well, folks, I'm above the normal time. Maybe I'll hit you up later with updates or something. I'm over my time limit that I set for myself because nobody wants to hear me drone on for 15 plus minutes. So listen, I'll talk to y'all later. Bye.